Hello, Algebra 2, and welcome to this back to school fun and exciting video on factoring to solve. So today we are going to learn how to take what we knew about factoring from before break and then set the factors equal to 0. So it's going to be a pretty easy day, but since I'm not here, we're going to be doing this lesson online. So first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you remember your factoring steps. So if you've forgotten your factoring steps, you're going to want to flip back a few pages in your notes to those factoring steps or rewrite these guys down. So if you remember our factoring steps, our first thing that we always check for when we are factoring is we look for a GCF. Okay? After we look for that GCF, we are checking to see how many terms are in our problem. Okay? If our problem has 2 terms, okay, then we are looking for either perfect squares or perfect cubes. Okay. If it's perfect cubes, that's when we're going to do our SOPs, okay, which is that acronym for our perfect cubes. Okay. If it's 3 terms, then we are going to do first times last. Okay. Remember, with our first times last, we are looking for any problem where we can use our cheater method. Okay. And then for 4 terms, we are going to be doing grouping. Okay. So that's kind of our thought processes that we're going to be following, and I will leave these up here as we progress through. We're going to be doing the odd numbered problems on your notes, and then you're going to be doing the even numbered problems on your own and then checking them on Google Classroom to make sure that they're right. Okay. So if you look at the steps up at the top of your notes, the key here is that we want to get all of the terms on one side, so that you'll notice on all of the problems down at the bottom of your notes, we now have an equal sign in the problem. So everything we did before Christmas break did not have an equal sign. Everything that we do moving forward now when we are solving will have an equal sign somewhere in the problem. So we are trying to get everything on one side of the equation. I prefer everything to be on the left. It doesn't matter where it is, but I want to make things positive. So if I can keep them positive, that's the key for me. Okay? So I want everything on the left side. Once everything is equal to 0, then we're going to factor, and we're going to do that using these factoring steps. After we factor, then I will go through steps 3 and 4 to show you how to do those 2 steps. So if we look at problem number 1 is x squared plus 9x. Okay. So those 2 things are on the left side, so it is already set equal to 0. So step 1 is done. So now we're going to move on to our factoring steps. So step 1 is we check for a GCF, which this problem obviously has a GCF. It is x. So I'm going to pull out that x, leaving me with x plus 9. Okay. Once I get to that step, now I'm on to step 3. Step 3 is set each factor equal to 0. Okay. A factor must have an x. Okay. So my factors in this situation are going to be the x, so I'm going to set x equal to 0, and I'm going to set x plus 9 equal to 0. Okay. And then I'm going to solve for x. This one is obviously already done. This one, I have to minus 9 on both sides. So when I subtract 9, I'm going to get x equals negative 9. Okay? So my 2 answers for this problem, okay, I'm writing them as a solution set, would be x equals, and then little brackets, 0 and negative 9. Okay? And those are my 2 answers for the problem. Okay? So I'm going to move on now to number 3. I'm going to keep my factoring steps up here. Number 3, I have x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. Okay. Again, everything is already over on the left side, so step 1 is done. So I am going to factor it. This problem does not have a GCF. There's nothing that they share. So we are moving on to 2 terms because there's 2 terms. I do not count the 0 as a term. Okay. So I have perfect squares, so I'm going to draw my parentheses. So I have x minus 2 and x plus 2. So I'm going to set each of those equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay. So now I solve them. Most of you are not going to need to write a solve step and the answer step. So my answer here would be x equals, and then my brackets, positive 2 and negative 2. Okay, let's move on to number 5. X squared minus 10x plus 21 equals 0. Again, we have all of our terms on the left, so step 1 is done. Factoring step, no GCF. I have 1, 2, 3 terms, so I'm going to do first times last. However, this is a cheater problem because there's a 1 in front, so I am checking for factors of 21 that add up to equal negative 10. Those factors would be negative 7 and negative 3. Okay. Since I can cheat, I can go ahead and plug those right into my answer. So x minus 7 and x minus 3 are my two sets of parentheses. So when I set those equal to 0, x minus 7 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. Okay. So then I have my two answers, x equals, and then my brackets, 7 and 3. Remember, we are setting them equal to 0, so we do have to switch the signs because we are adding 7 to move it to the other side of the equation. Okay. Let's move on to number 7. Okay. Number 7, we have 3x squared minus 13x minus 30 is equal to 0. Okay. Everything is on the left side of the equation, so we're good there. We have 1, 2, 3 terms with no GCF. Okay. So we are on to our first times last. This one I cannot cheat because I have the 3 in front. So I have first times last. I have factors of negative 90 that add up to negative 13. Okay. So I have to start making my list of factors. So I have 1 times 90, obviously doesn't work. We have 2 and 45. We have 3 and 30. Okay. We have 4 does not go into 90. Okay. 90 divided by 5, which is, I believe, 18. Yep. And 18 and 5 are going to be the factors that I want to give me negative 13. So I would need negative 18 and positive 5 to give me that negative 13. So I'm going to go ahead and plug those guys in. So 3x squared minus 18x plus 5x minus 30. Okay. Make your two groups. These two share 3x, which gives me x minus 6. These two share 5, gives me x minus 6. They match. Life's great. 3x plus 5. X minus 6, set those equal to 0. So x minus 6 equals 0. So x equals 6 is my first answer. 3x plus 5 equals 0. Minus 5, 3x equals negative 5. And then divide by 3. We end up with x is equal to negative 5/3. Okay, so my solution set would look like, I'm going to come up here because I'm running out of room. X is equal to 6 and negative 5/3 as my answer to that problem. Okay, and there is the work for that again, kind of showing you that one more time. Okay, let's move on to the back. Okay, we're going to try number 9 next. Okay, we are not going to do all of the problems on the back, but I'm going to pick a few of them. So let's start with problem number 9. We have 2x squared equals 5x. So this is the first problem that we've done. Let me erase that solution set from before, where we actually have to do step number 1. Okay, step number 1 on the front side of your notes said it was a requirement to get everything on one side. Okay, and again, which thing do you move? I like everything to be over here on the left, and I like to keep the 2x squared positive. So I'm going to move the 5x. So I have 2x squared minus 5x equals 0. Make sure you minus that problem to move it over to the other side. You want to make sure you're keeping your signs opposite when you move things. Okay, now everything's equal to 0. Now you can move on to your next step. GCF, yep, I have an x giving me 2x minus 5. Now I can set stuff to 0. X equals 0, 2x minus 5 equals 0. Okay, this is my first answer. Second answer would be add 5, divide by 2, x equals 5 divided by 2. Okay, so your solution set is 0 and 5 divided by 2. Okay. Let's jump down to problem number 15, please. 2x squared minus 9x minus 65 equals x squared minus x. Okay. So this is problem number 15. So this time we have two things that need to move over to this side. So the first thing we need to do is minus the x squared. So that's going to give me 1x squared, which is great because that makes this problem a cheater problem. And then we're going to need to add x. So then we have negative 8x, and then minus 65 is equal to 0. Okay. So now we have a cheater problem. So we are now finding factors of 65 that add up to equal 0, or add up to equal negative 8. Okay. So 65 is kind of an odd number. It doesn't have a ton of factors. So 65 divided by 5 is equal to 13. So that's going to be the one that we want. So we need factors of negative 65 that add up to negative 8. So we have 13 and 5. And since the 8 is negative, that means the 13 is going to have to be negative. So since this is a cheater problem, x minus 13, x plus 5 can go right in the parentheses. But remember, we are setting those to 0, so we do have to flip it. That's the number one mistake in these problems, is forgetting that this is equal to 0. So x minus 13 equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. So then my solution set for this problem would be x is equal to positive 13 and negative 5. Okay, I am going to do one more. I'm going to do number 17. Number 17, we have 2x squared is equal to x plus 21. Okay. So I picked this one just to kind of, again, reiterate how we want to move stuff to the other side. So this one has nothing to subtract from, so we need to minus x and minus the 21. So we would end up with 2x squared minus x minus 21 is equal to 0. Okay. So kind of a weird initial start to this problem. So from here, right, we are multiplying first times last because we have 3 terms, no GCF. So when we do this problem, we would end up with factors of negative 42 that add up to equal negative 1. Okay? Anytime you want negative 1, you're always finding factors that are right next to each other. So our factors of 42 are 7 and 6. Okay, and since we need the 1 to be negative, we would need the 7 to be negative. So negative 7, positive 6. Okay, let's plug those guys in. 2x squared minus 7x plus 6x minus 21. Okay. Switch colors, make our groups. First two share x, gives me 2x minus 7. Second two share a 3, gives me 2x minus 7. Okay, so my answers in parentheses would be x plus 3 and 2x minus 7. Okay, we are setting those equal to 0. So we have x plus 3 equals 0 and 2x minus 7 equals 0. I am running out of room. I apologize. Solution set, right, would equal x is equal to negative 3 and positive 7 over 2. Okay. So that kind of sums up how we do the factoring to solve. One thing that we do want to keep in mind when we are doing factoring to solve is that GCFs don't count as part of your solution set. So what I mean by that is if you flip over your sheet real quick to number 6, okay, and let's look at that guy real quick. So we have 2x squared minus 2x minus 24 equals 0. Okay. This is a 3-term problem, okay, but it does have a GCF, 2, 2, and 24. So a GCF without an x, if I take out the 2, I have x squared minus x minus 12 equals 0. So I can cheat on this problem. I can